Midnight's Edge is a non-partisan channel. What we are all about is celebrating genre culture and highlighting the behind-the-scenes corporate governance which decides what form that genre culture takes in modern-day incarnations and adaptations. The only times we will ever comment on partisan politics are when they are directly infused into our genre entertainment and to the detriment of said genre entertainment. So, here we are. Among the prime offenders in this regard is the Disney Corporation and its affiliates. Due to a recent document leak, we now have a clearer image of just why that might be. Make no mistake about it. While these documents are intended primarily for the theme park employees, the intent expressed within them apply to the company as a whole, including the various production wings. In terms of the parks, though, that is an area where I can claim very little expertise. So, in this video, I teamed up with an esteemed colleague who does, namely Lorena Creole.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us.
Oh, you're very welcome. Glad to be here.
Yes, this is going to be a doozy, because together we will break down what these documents are, what they say, and their implications, both for the parks and for what we ultimately cover here at Midnight's Edge, the entertainment to come out of Disney. So, Lorena, these documents, tell us about them. What are they? When were they made? And how were they leaked?
Well, we'll kind of start off with how they were leaked. Now, I had gotten a heads up on Twitter about this one particular story, and I actually have to shout out Fat Steven Seagal. He had sent me the tweet, and it was from, I believe, a Christopher F. Rufo, someone I'd never heard of before. And of course, you know, anybody can put anything out there on the internet. So he had his tweets out there. He had a couple of screenshots. Pretty much anyone can do things in Photoshop. So it's one person. So I didn't really lend that much credence to it, because you don't want to, as much as Disney is just, you know, persona non grata these days in a lot of circles, especially with Star Wars fandom, you don't really want to go off of what one person said. So I kind
of course, we've all seen like doctored tweets and everything, so we have to do like some fact checking.
Exactly. But when you start to hear about things kind of going together, and when other reputable sources, like, for example, Pirates and Princesses, of course, Clownfish TV is behind that, they came out with this article which they had put up on their website, but had taken it down because they weren't sure, they didn't get enough corroborating evidence, but they wound up putting it back up for two reasons. One, outlets like Newsweek were picking up the story, and other outlets were picking up the story. So they decided, okay, why don't we go back and post the story? So not only did they repost the story, but the person who originally posted the tweet about those documents had finally put up a PDF of those documents. So the documents that the screenshots that he put out on Twitter, also, you kind of have to keep into mind that even though the PDF was released, that PDF has not been authenticated as bona fide coming from Disney. But what I was able to find out, courtesy of Pirates and Princesses, and this article is written by WDW Pro, who is very well known in our circles for having a lot of insider information and analysis.
Indeed. Yeah, we have
Mhm.
run with WDW Pro's scoops on multiple occasions in previous Midnight's Edge videos. So kudos to both him and to Clownfish TV and Pirates and Princesses for revealing both this and so much other Disney goodness.
Yes. And with this, the pertinent pieces of data that they put together was when it was mentioned that Reimagine Tomorrow has also been mentioned in Disney documents. Now, what Disney document, you may be wondering what that is. Well, that Disney document happens to be the 2020 Corporate Social Responsibility Report. Now, for people who aren't aware, corporate social responsibility, that's kind of like your officer who, shows this is all the great stuff that the company is doing, save the whales, save the environment, helping out less fortunate. You would think like a charitable board, so to speak, which is usually what it's associated with. Of course, there have been more progressive objectives of late. But there's an actual corporate social responsibility officer. And actually, I'm going to show you who that is. This is Disney's executive leadership. So, of course, we all know who Iger is and who Bob Chapek is. So you have this young lady here, Jenny Cohen, who is the executive VP of corporate social responsibility. So what we'll do actually here is we'll go back to this report. Now, again, the reason why this report is so important is because this report is the first place where this term reimagine tomorrow had popped up. So it's not very obvious, because what I had to actually do is I had to comb through this PDF, actually search through it. So here on, we'll call it slide number 3. And if you go over here, we've launched, and again, this was in 2020 when this was released. I want to say about September 2020. It says here, as part of this important work, we've launched a number of new programs and events, such as our Reimagine Tomorrow Conversation series.
That's a very Disney name right there. Everything relating to tomorrow. That is something that has history within Disney, but perhaps with not necessarily within the context which we are about to see.
No, people think about that and they think, the Tomorrowland Pavilion at the Magic Kingdom at Disneyland. They're not really thinking of, we'll say, reimagineering how they want to go with respect to diversity and inclusion in this company. So for a layperson, it doesn't, you hear that, like a park goer, you hear that and you think, oh, kind of like Tomorrowland, we're going into the future, right? Corporate speak, not really. Something means something a bit different, a bit more insidious, I would say.
Exactly. So let us get, and before we get into that insidiousness, are there more references to this Tomorrow initiative within this presentation?
Oh, absolutely. Let's see. Let's go here to slide number 11. Go down here. So this lady here, Latondra Newton, I've dropped her name several times in other appearances on Midnight's Edge. She is the Senior Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer of the Disney Company. She actually came from Toyota, where she was also a diversity officer there as well, before she landed at Disney. So here you'll see Reimagine Tomorrow Conversation Series. It's also there, over there on the left, with the Black Women's Perspective on Race virtual event. That slide right there. Here, we've also unveiled a unifying diversity and inclusion effort, Reimagine Tomorrow.
And beyond that, I also see another one of the, shall we say, dog whistle words, advancing social equity, right there in the headline.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's a big one. I would say that is the biggest one, the biggest takeaway from what they're doing with this diversity and inclusion initiative. It's gone past the standard, I'll say in the past, I want to say sadly in the past, in corporate America of diversity and inclusion, meaning that you're casting a net to get talent from all groups. You wanted the best of the best, even recruiting from groups that don't normally get as much exposure, but you actively make a point to go and get all of those best people from those groups. So it was more about casting a wider net. It's not about that merit anymore. It's about social equity now, not equality, but equity.
And we may get into that a little bit later on. Again, that's a little bit between the distinct. That may be a little bit beyond what this channel usually covers, but we may get into that as we get into more of the contents of what is covered. But before we get into that, this presentation here, any more references and promises towards what will be in the Tomorrow Initiative?
Oh, absolutely. Let's see. We've got 2 more slides to go here. So here we have Reimagine Tomorrow, mentioned again here in the section for competitive pay with respect to the workforce. Then you also see it again on slide 36. You'll see it here again with them hosting their 8 virtual events through the Be Imagined Tomorrow series. So this one was more specific to talent development.
Also, I cannot help but notice that there's a big reference to Black History Month, and there it also says that we will help build momentum for future efforts that empower, instill optimism with, and earn the loyalty of Black employees and consumers.
Yes.
I cannot help but think that that sounded suspiciously self-serving and not all that altruistic, if you catch my drift.
Oh, completely self-serving. Completely self-serving. That's more of a look at us, look at how great we are. And you know what? If we build up our employees in this way, I have in quotes in this way, then again, people want to buy more stuff from us.
You very rarely see a company being that straightforward in an official presentation. So kudos for that, I guess.
It's more of just, okay, you said there's the phrase saying the quiet part out loud. They said it out loud, but they actually put it in print.
Yeah, I guess that yeah, good going there. Good going putting the quiet part in print.
Yeah, right, where pretty much anyone outside the company can get a hold of that. No, not very bright at all. Then, of course, we have one last appearance where this is, and it's on the summary slide, as I always like to call it. Where are we? Yep. Here we are right here. And why am I drawing a blank here? Here we go. Okay. Reimagine Tomorrow. Again, it's mentioned there as well. For the highlights for fiscal year 2020.
So that's a highlight. This, of course, is very promising for the year 2021, because it should be noticed then that if this is released about 6 months ago, say, or more than that, around like September 2020, then these are policies that already would have been in place before then and will only be more and more dominant as time goes by, is the reasonable assumption, is it not?
That would be a very reasonable assumption.
Yes, and with that, let us get into the next document, which would be the Reimagine Tomorrow document itself. because although we cannot guarantee that this, as it is, comes from Disney, we haven't been able to vet that. But there's every reason to think so, just based on how many times this particular document was referred to within an official Disney presentation.
Yes. Buzzwords have meaning.
Yes, exactly. And with that, then, let us go through this document, and more importantly, the message which is presented within it.
Okay, so this document here they call Allyship for Race Consciousness. So in the generalization that I get is basically, here's a handbook that if you want to be an ally for race consciousness, and I don't want to say if you want to be, because I get the impression that people are being voluntold at Disney.
They're basically ordered that, okay, this is something that you are all strongly suggested to volunteer for. And if you do not volunteer for this, you may start brushing up your resume for your next position. That kind of thing.
That is exactly it. Exactly it. That's what I call the voluntold. Not volunteer, but you're voluntold, to go and do this. So this handbook, it's about 22 pages or so. And here they talk about many of us are wondering how we can step up to support Black colleagues and promote racial justice.
I would just like to say that already in that first sentence, one has gone and made an assumption. You have gone and you have taken a political ideology that is not based in fact. It's an ideology, and you treat that as if it were fact.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Because if I read this, when they say many of us, I'm like, who's us and how many are there? That to me, it's like, why do you make that assumption? And if you're saying, how can we step up to support Black colleagues? Okay, so you're not talking about with respect to merit. You're talking about this nebulous term out there called racial justice.
Indeed, with everything that implies. And it only gets worse from there. So let's go through some of the highlights.
Okay, so this one, they have this, thought starters for allies. So it's kind of like the whole document basically is step by step to one, pretty much make Disney employees who are white feel guilty about being white and basically being told what they need to do, in order to be an ally. So if you look at these bullet points here, these thought starters or whatever, it's very indoctrinating.
Yes, and I would also like to point out that just reading that, when they call it thought starters, that is actually gaslighting, because I have seen points like that before. You will find them many, many places. They are used for indoctrination, as you say. In reality, they're not thought starters. They are thought suppressing processes. They are intended to stop critical thought, buy into the ideology, and then, as we will see later, you have some common questions are addressed and dismissed. So these are thought-stopping mechanisms rather than thought starters.
Absolutely. So here, it's interesting here where they're saying, do not rely on your Black colleagues to educate you. This is emotionally taxing. When I see that, it's like they're against people who just say, I have a colleague that's Black, since we have a relationship, why don't I just talk to them like a normal human being? No, they don't want you to do that. Don't think on your own. Think with these points that we give you.
Exactly. They're also saying, do not seek external confirmation of what you are told. Do not
Exactly.
ask. This is what you are told. Believe. Do the research. Indoctrinate yourself, and do not seek external information to do any kind of fact checking to what you are told here. Again, thought stopping mechanisms.
Exactly. Exactly. And oh, I just like to note this asterisk down here, which says, think of this guide. This asterisk, we would like to thank the Disney Parks Experiences and Products Diversity Inclusion Team for their significant contribution to the content. I just thought that was an interesting little thing to point out here. But it's pretty much just a guide to basically indoctrinate you about buying into this whole thing about
Yes.
with Black Lives Matter, basically telling you how you need to talk to your colleagues. Don't talk to them as if they're human beings just like you. It's like they have to be protected. You can't question them, question your privilege first, which is pretty much what they go through here, like with engaging, embracing discomfort and humility along the way will enable your growth as an ally.
Yes, because basically what they do is that they give you a narrative. They present that narrative. They dissuade you from doing any kind of external validating fact check of any kind, and then they make you reflect and repeat the narrative in your own words. Again, pure indoctrination.
Pure. And here's the one, I can skip through the other slides too, but here's one that really got my blood boiling, where it says, do not question or debate Black colleagues' lived experience. For example, are you sure they meant it that way? It's not a race thing, or I'm playing devil's advocate. Instead, reserve judgment and offer statements of validation if someone shares their experience. So you're not allowed to question.
Not only are you not allowed to question, you are instead told that, oh yeah, that wasn't just an accident or someone having a shitty day. That was absolutely you being victimized. This is how you perpetuate a false victimhood narrative. Because here you could have had one guy who has had a really, really shitty day, and then he just mouths off to an employee who happened to be non-white. And because of that, they here say, oh yeah, you were completely victimized. Again, this is digging into the narrative. These are thought-stopping mechanisms right here. They explicitly say it. Do not question, do not debate, do not look into the facts. Instantly validate an emotional response, which may or may not be based on fact that we do not know. You are to validate it in any event. This is furthering the narrative. This is cult indoctrination 101. L. Ron Howard himself could not have written better.
No. And this is something with my experience in the corporate world, and of course you, Andrea, as well. This wasn't how things used to be. It was, if you've got an issue with, with someone or whatever, you discuss it as human beings, laying all the options there, out on the table. And the first thing wasn't, oh, well, they said so and this to me, they must be racist. It was just like, no, let's have the discussion and lay the facts out there. Maybe they were having a bad day, maybe it's like they weren't, acting towards you that way because you happen to be non-white. Maybe they were acting towards you that way because you happen to be a jerk that day. That seems to happen. But like you were saying, they're going from facts and logic to get to the crux of the problem to automatically painting all non-white employees as, victims. And that's extremely insulting. That's extremely bigoted. And it's disgusting that they're getting away with it. But you have enablers all the way up at the higher level that are doing this. And even going down through here, even even further. Now, I will say, because usually with every lie, there's a grain of truth that's in there. So they do have some points where they're like, beware of tokenism. Okay, that's pretty much a standard with corporate training that HR would give you. That's pretty much known out there. There's no pushback when it comes, when it comes to that.
Yeah, because that's what's so insidious here. Because here you have a really, really toxic cult mentality that's being forced upon you, but mixed in with that so that you can't reject it completely. You have some kernels of truth, which many will have been thought before in previous diversity training that didn't have this component.
No, that diversity and inclusion training, again, as I said earlier, was more about casting a wider net to get that talent that you may not have been aware of before, and making the company stronger because you have all of these talented people from pools that hadn't been considered before. But now it's completely changed, and it's insidious. But they also, it even goes even further, because you have to have reading resources, right?
Yeah, exactly. You have to have references for further indoctrination to build up the narrative.
Absolutely. So you know what? Here's some references for you to brush up on white privilege. So they have their recommended podcast. NPR, Why Am I Not Surprised? The New Yorker, Why Am I Not Surprised? Racially Just Workplace, Harvard Business Review, our favorite, Forbes magazine. I say favorite, in quotes there. And allyship, Vanity Fair.
I have to stop like this thing. Forbes. I see the headline of the article. Stop asking black people if you can touch their hair. Has that ever been a thing? And if there was, did that not stop being a thing in the 1820s?
Oh, God, in the US, I would even say probably like the 1900s, but it's just ridiculous. I can't even, this is just myself. This is just me speaking for me. In my whole lifetime, I have only had one person ask me if they can touch my hair. And that was when I went to a school friend's house for dinner. And she had younger cousins that were kids that were visiting from Eastern Europe. And they weren't insulting about it at all. They were just like fascinated. And I wasn't insulted by that. But this makes it seem as this is everyday occurrence. This doesn't happen every day. But
yeah, in other words, that one time, that was for people that literally had never seen a black person in person.
Exactly, in person. And I tell people I didn't get offended by that, because my grandfather, who fought in World War II, who was over in Germany, there was a family that he was feeding because they were basically starving over there. And he would give this one German boy, food to take back to his family. This German boy was so appreciative. He didn't care that my grandfather was black. He wanted to take him home to his family, to him to meet his family. There's genuine, curiosity where there's no offense that's meant. And then you have indoctrination pieces like this that make it seem as if this is an everyday occurrence that goes on. It's insidious, but it gets worse. It gets worse. So you have your global perspectives here, why African nations support U.S. anti-racism protesters. I'm not going to get into how hypocritical it is when it comes to Africa, actually. And of course, the New York Times, they're bestsellers on race and civil rights. I guarantee you these are not bona fide history books. I guarantee you it's probably revisionist history, written probably within the past 10 years, or so, not written to give the facts, but written to paint a certain narrative.
Yeah, kind of like that series of articles the Smithsonian has, in which they point to Dungeons and Dragons as problematic and racist and all of science fiction and everything like that. That would be the same people that also decided that being efficient and waking up on time and showing up to work on time were all manifestations of whiteness, I guess. And we'll get into that here too, won't we?
Oh, absolutely. Because, like they say, but wait, there's more. So, here is the What Can I Do About Racism Anti-Racism Discussion Guide. And one of the things that popped out to me, again, the authenticity of this hasn't been validated yet, but I pay attention to anything that looks like a corporate training that's going on, and I really wish that I would have had my tab open. But this company, Blue Ocean Brain, they do diversity training, online diversity training modules. So, not that far of a stretch that if this document is true, that there's computer-based training that Disney employees have access to for diversity training to perpetuate this this here. And
yeah, that's it'd be interesting to see exactly what kind of training they deliver as a general thing, but just looking at this, I think we can probably make an educated guess as to the nature of that diversity training, if this is representative.
Exactly. So, of course, introduction, what can I do about racism? So here's the discussion that goes on, and the links to the Blue Ocean Brain Library and outsourced resources will help you dive deeper into topics for further conversation and reference. And they say that this guide is not built to cast blame, but to provide information that can help build skills, or so they say. So, of course, you have here unconscious contributions to racism, becoming an anti-racist today. Looking forward, it's equity, not equality, etc., and so on. So you see where this is leading to.
Yes, this is taking us very, very far from the corporate realm, because in terms of dealing with customers in a Disney park, you don't even have to make any kind of, or you should not have to become an active anti-racist, nor should you have to reflect over if society should strive for equity or if it should strive for equality. At the moment that those things are put in there, then there's a larger game being played here than merely corporate social responsibility.
Absolutely. Because with cast members at the park, the objectives, or the overall objective, is service to the customer, which would be your guests. So where, again, that fifth key, the key of inclusivity, which got added, late last year, I believe, that got added. So that had nothing to do with the others, but they're bringing that in, of course, because they're changing pretty much where the company is going. So here, it's pretty much, this is it. It's pretty much trying to get people to think, oh, I can't be racist because of X, Y, and Z. A lot of it is just basically a guilt trip where they're talking about implicit biases and everything. So they're talking about that.
So basically what they are doing here, they are saying to every single white person, yes, you are an evil, nasty racist. Even if you don't mean to be, even if you try to be colorblind, that's actually worse, because that makes you extra racist. So this is one big guilt trip, trying to get you into the narrative for what you must do to do better, you evil, vicious, nasty racist. That's kind of what it says here, isn't it?
That's exactly what it says here. And when I look at this, I think of, what if you have people in your company who are biracial? Like, I have biracial nieces and nephews. Are you telling them that half of them is evil?
Well, yes.
That's
exactly what they're doing. They are explicitly saying that they are evil and nasty. It doesn't matter what they tried, and to purge themselves of sin, they'll never be able to. But at least they can make an effort by becoming active anti-racists. But they can never be forgiven for the sin of being white. That's my takeaway from reading this.
And Andre, you're absolutely right. Because when I read through this, and even exclusive of documents like this, because I've had to go through quote unquote diversity and inclusion training, the type of it that's coming out now, it's gone from let's treat everyone equally with respect to if you're white, you're inherently racist. And you have to pay for that. So you have to, there's one rule for you and rules for everyone else. Everyone is equal, but some are more equal than others. You've heard that before, right?
Oh, yes. Very, very apt phrase.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of the implication here. If you are white, you are less equal than others. You are born with red on your file. You have to do better. You have to make atonement, permanent atonement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This right here had me seeing red when I looked at this.
Yes, to those that are not looking, here is a chart where it says first what not to say to your black colleagues right now, and underneath are questions that would actually result in a conversation being had in which some learning and exchange of information might actually take place. Those things you are not allowed to say. Instead, what you are to say are basically statements that say, I'm so sorry for being white, I try to do better, with no kind of questions or anything to inspire a conversation, just self-flagellating. That is what you are to say.
Yes, pretty much what not to say is the column where you're pretty much treating the other person as a human being, where you treat them actually with respect and trying to get to the crux of the issue, speaking to each other as human beings, as equals. The other column is what I like to call the patronization column, where they treat you as if, you're delicate, you can't, handle a bona fide conversation. And it's very maddening. It's maddening and it's insulting. It's like I have to be treated differently, or somehow you have to treat your non-white colleagues differently. It's just it's insulting, and it didn't used to be that way. But this is pretty much how it is now. You can't ask someone directly, and speak as equals. You have to talk down to them and patronize them instead. Ugh. Yeah, and they call that inclusion. So again, of course, with the kernel of truth thing, these are here they say how to build belonging. So a lot of these are things that have been said in the past with respect to corporate training with diversity and inclusion, recognizing accomplishments, encouraging free expression, valuing everyone's contributions, helping others feel comfortable at work, communicate transparently. No one really has a problem with these. The problem is, go ahead, Andre.
Yeah, no, because then you have like the big thing in there. Then it says underwood, have you heard of the term intersectionality? Which, of course, is the cornerstone of this ideology. I mean, if you read like any kind of like pamphlet that comes from one of, say, I just use Scientology as an example because that's like one of the most commercially available and dissected cults out there. Because they have like so many different branches. You have like their wing for company or company enterprises and for management consulting, and you have their wing for getting off drugs and everything. And they start off as exactly that. But they build like this little narrative, and then you have this little thing in there. Have you heard of the teachings of L. Ron Hubbard? He was a great man. This is like kind of what this is. They build a narrative, fill it with the thought-stopping processes, and then have you heard of the term intersectionality? You should look that up, because that is what we're preaching.
Oh, that just felt like a backhand when I read that. I'm like, oh, and you were doing pretty good there for a while. And then you throw that one, out there. It's just, here's my favorite one from this thing here, where they do the equality versus equity. And they say equality is a noble goal. I thought that was the main goal.
Yes, but again, that's a difference between equality and equity, because you have like the promotional, the marketing spin of equity is that picture to the right there, where you have like the tall person, he gets nothing, he can see over the fence just fine, and the slightly shorter person gets some boxes to stand on, and the disabled person gets a ramp. Of course, that's the fiction, that's the marketing line. Equity in reality is more like you break the legs of the tall person so that none of them are able to see over the fence, and the others, well, they'll get the ramp, they'll get the box, but it won't be enough to stand over. Basically, equity means that everyone will be equally poor and out of opportunity. That's what equity means. Equally
miserable is another
yes.
One that someone told me, and it's such a false picture here, because
it has never worked at any point in history.
Never. No, it hasn't.
Not once, in no society. And even there are some people that try to point to like the Scandinavian models. You've been misinformed. Doesn't work like that, not even here. We don't have equity. It's not the goal.
And yet they love to hold up, they say, oh, for the perfect example, look to the Scandinavian countries when it comes to this.
Yes, exactly. Look to the capitalist nations that is the Scandinavian model with heavy tax financed welfare on the side. But you take away the capitalist thing there, and that's the rest of the welfare is going to collapse instantly.
Mm-hmm. But I will say, like with this picture where they have here for equity, when you're doing this based on merit, you all get to this point, or the possibility to get to this point. They're trying to guarantee equality of outcome. You can't guarantee that.
Well, you can't guarantee it if everyone ends up in the same shitty place. If everyone that otherwise would have done good ends up in the gutter, then you have guaranteed the same outcome for everyone.
Ugh. That's something else. So, of course, here they go through, more discussion points. What actionable steps can you take to be an anti-racist? Seriously? Not, what steps can you take to treat everyone equally, or to treat everyone in a workplace with respect and empathy? No, what actionable steps can you take to be an anti-racist? It's just...
Again, this is indoctrination, pure indoctrination. You have already been fed the answers, and the big part of this is self-flagellating. That's a big one. Completely.
So, again, down to my other favorite part, resources for further reading, of course. So, again, there's this company that they keep mentioning, Blue Ocean Brain Resources. If this document is authentic, I talk about how to be an ally, confronting biases. So it looks like these are all their training that rolls up to there. Then we get to the outside resources. And the first one up there is one that I have a profound problem with. Andre, are you familiar with the 1619 Project?
Vaguely, yes. I know it's a completely unscientific, utter fabrication and rewriting of history. It's something of like America didn't begin with signing of the Constitution, but it began with some other nasty, nasty stuff taking place in 1619.
Yes, that's pretty much the crux of it. But even that isn't accurate. 1619 project basically excludes 80% of my family's history. The reason for that is because my family, 80% of my family, arrived in what became Florida, extreme southern Alabama and Mississippi, and Louisiana. So you had the French, the Spanish who got here first in 1565. They don't include that. And another thing that they don't include is that you had people of African descent who were here in 1565 who were not slaves. Not every person who was African was a slave. And the 1619 Project likes to perpetuate that, but they won't take into account anything before 1619.
Well, if you look at the Olmec statues in South America, which date back thousands of years ago, we don't even know how old they are. There's black people there. So yeah.
Yeah, it's such a propaganda piece. So when that 1619 one came out, I just had to pretty much destroy that because it's so fallacious and so historically inaccurate. The fact that Disney would actually use this to refer to as something to refer to, no, not something with such sloppy research and historical inaccuracies. Absolutely not. But here you go down here, and of course they have notification about racism for adults, how to be in that whole list there. Even have something for your kids and your teenagers. Okay. Although I will say Black and Latin America, that's more of a historical thing. I don't know why they're including that about quote unquote racism, because I've actually viewed that series by Lewis Gates. So I guess they're just throwing that in there just to throw that in there. And then, of course, fiction by authors of color. Again, not to, like, say, expand your knowledge base, but pretty much you must read these. And these are not the only, authors of color that are out there. Same thing, they go here for kids. Same thing, middle grade, teens, to pretty much indoctrinate not only just you, but your family as well.
Great stuff. Are there any more highlights to go through of the message for Disney employees going forward in this document? Or was that about the gist of it?
That's about the gist of this particular document. Again, Disney employees, if this document is authentic, to volunteer employees that you need to be an ally for race consciousness. And you have to do it in the way that we tell you in order to do it, no matter how paternalistic, no matter how bigoted, no matter how insulting it is. This is where the company is going. And if you want to be with the company, you need to buy into this. And that's exactly the gist that I get from this.
Yeah, and the thing to note here is that this is first and foremost, it's for the theme park employees. However, this appears to be the corporate strategy, meaning it's not just for the theme park employees. It would affect every level of Disney, even the various production wings, such as Marvel, such as Lucasfilm, such as Pixar. Could this explain some of the things that we have seen, like in, for instance, WandaVision? There's two things that I think of there in particular, because I actually did see WandaVision. We both did. It started off really, really good, and it ended shall we say, not so really, really good.
Yeah, it didn't stick the landing, as I like to say.
Where Wanda herself was absolved of all guilt despite having ruined the lives permanently of thousands of people, but that was okay. And those people will never understand how much she sacrificed to free them. She gave up some figments of her imagination. So yeah, a pretty heavy sacrifice there. And we also recently learned from Kevin Feige that Doctor Strange, he was originally planned to be in WandaVision, but they took him out so as not to take anything away from Wanda herself. Which of course makes very little sense, given that in almost every other recent Marvel movie you have had one other star, sometimes even a much bigger star, come in and take the spotlight. And then he also mentioned that, well, they couldn't have a white guy come in and explain to Wanda how to do magic, presumably because that would be problematic. Do you think that that could be related to what we just saw of like this vision for a better tomorrow under Disney?
Oh, I believe it's totally related. Totally related. I know we've had discussions and there's been other podcasts going around where they're talking about why is Marvel going down this path? You know, we call nicknamed it the the MCU. Why is it that they're going down this particular path with this? I totally believe this has something to do with it. Again, like we were saying earlier, not only is this guidance for the theme park employees, but also it goes and touches every aspect of Disney and Disney properties. I know for myself personally, I was looking forward to seeing Doctor Strange show up. It made sense considering that WandaVision was supposed to dovetail into Doctor Strange 2. That movie made perfect sense just from the comics that I'd read. The one comic that I did have for Vision and the Scarlet Witch actually had Doctor Strange in it. So I was looking forward to that. And the fact that it comes out that they didn't want to include him because he was a white man is the lamest excuse I've ever heard. It tells me that you want to put this agenda of demonizing white men ahead of providing entertainment that lines up with the comics. You don't care about the comic book fans. You don't care about the MCU fans who want to be entertained. You want to push an agenda, and that's more important to you.
Yeah, on that note, I actually didn't even see The Falcon and the Winter Soldier for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, I was so incredibly let down by how they dropped the ball on WandaVision, the Gina Carano firing. I just didn't have any enthusiasm for it. So I didn't see the first episode. And then I only heard bad reviews of it. So I waited. Then I didn't see the second or the third, but I heard the reviews, and they got progressively worse and worse and worse. But you saw some of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Do you see, or did you see any kind of like link or similarity in the message as we just saw in these documents with what was communicated in that series?
Absolutely. I wasn't really excited about Falcon and the Winter Soldier at first because given the trailer, you weren't going to find out about who Falcon was in his own right, because I only knew Falcon from the MCU movies. So I'm thinking, okay, the series will get to know more about who he is and his place in the Marvel universe. Instead, they set him up to be Captain America 2.0. I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. You're basically saying Falcon doesn't have his own merits. You have to, take Captain America's, lack of a better term, sloppy seconds. But that's pretty much how it went. And all through the entire series, you could, the 2 episodes, I only watched 2. The first episode, the second episode. The second episode really encompassed a lot of what we were talking about earlier, with this race consciousness, this document that they were talking about. It was so prevalent in that episode. I was done after episode 2. I was not interested in seeing that. I wasn't interested in seeing them just it's so patronizing. I just didn't like the fact of them just focusing on Sam's race, or even later on in episode 4, making Bucky feel guilty, as a white man, when he says, he tells Sam, I didn't know how it would affect you as a black man to take up the shield of Captain America. I believe I'm paraphrasing, but you can completely see it. You can completely see it all throughout that series, which is why I believe viewership dropped off so sharply.
That's actually a very, very good point, because there's two sides to this, and one is, how do you think that the employees in Disney are going to react to them constantly being told that, or the white employees in particular, for being told that they're evil and nasty, but also to all of the other non-white employees who are here told, you're all just victims and you need special treatment. You're not really persons. The white people are persons, and they need to make atonement for everything that was done to you without any kind of own agency, that need special treatment. Because that's my reading of that, for one thing. Also the public, and finally future productions. How is the audience going to react to all of this?
That's those are good questions. I would say for the people who are just tired of this, they're going to take their expertise and go elsewhere. Find a company that's not, pushing this agenda so hard. You may have some people who think, okay, I'm just going to use this and be politically astute and use people's ignorance against them. If you're going to treat me as if, I'm some kind of lesser person, I'm going to take advantage of that. You have some people who think that they can do that. And then you have some people who are just like, I'm not going to stand around and be insulted. I came here to work for Disney because I thought that it was, one of the top companies. I didn't want to work here to be indoctrinated to tell me that, my white coworkers are somehow evil and that I'm lesser than they are. I don't. Some people are just going to leave. Some people are going to take advantage of the situation. As for viewers, if some of them are any of them like you or like you're just turning it off and looking for other things to watch. Because it's like, why should I sit there and watch something where I'm going to get indoctrinated every week? I'm no longer being entertained. I'm seeing agendas in everything that I watch. So I'm not gonna sit around. With respect to the theme parks, this is another thing. With the theme parks, it's a bit different. With the theme parks, it's about what you see. The changes have kind of started when they tried to make Pirates of the Caribbean ride politically correct, and it's no longer Pirates of the Caribbean. No, it's definitely not as interesting as it used to be. And then the announcement with what they wanted to do with Splash Mountain, where, no longer based on African American folktales anymore. They consider that problematic. They're going to use their own sanitized IP. And also with the Jungle Cruise, claiming that was culturally insensitive, removing distinctive elements that made that ride what it is, to the point where it's not the same ride anymore. So when you have people coming to the parks who were there to especially reminisce with their kids and with their grandkids, it's like the attractions are not what they remember, and there's no real storytelling to them at all. And eventually attendance drops off and they take their money elsewhere, like with a lot of other people who are taking their money to Universal instead of Disney, where they're not worried about being preached to. They're just like, we're just going to have a good time and enjoy ourselves there at the parks. Now, that's the reason why the Wizarding World at Harry Potter is doing gangbusters compared to Galaxy's Edge at Disney.